The following is a presentation of Moonlight Media Works. It's another brand new edition of the Janus Show, a Moonlight Media Works production. It is Thursday night, April 30th, just before May, the night before May, and a lot has happened since we last spoke. We had the third annual Moonlight Media Works Draft Show Extravaganza. Hope everybody enjoyed that. I think we made 13 cents on TikTok. Not to brag or nothing, but thank you guys. I appreciate that. I can't do anything with 13 cents, but it's nice to see that I earned 13 cents. By the way, I'm going to be doing this a lot. Every time I go do a podcast without a hat on, I'm always going to be gesturing and fiddling with my hair. Because you guys get to watch these full episodes and you have to look at this. But the entire time I'm doing the show, I'm looking directly at myself. So it's very distracting. A lot of stuff happened. Not a particularly strong draft, I will say that. We'll talk about that a little later on. But it was a fun show. Glad everybody was able to tune in all seriousness. We do appreciate everybody who joined the show between YouTube, TikTok. The TikTok audience was phenomenal. No jokes there. It was great to have everybody tuned in there. Facebook Live. If you haven't followed our social media accounts, please do so we can do more fun stuff on those specific accounts. Moonlight Media Works on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. TikTok is mine. It's CollinsJ9898. It's just the name I could get. That's more of a individual host page, but it serves as our social media page on TikTok. So thank you all to everyone who tuned in, shared the show. It was a lot of fun. It's always a lot of fun. We've done it for 3 years in a row now, and we've introduced so many new things to the repertoire, including the board. Everybody loved the board. Still waiting on that trademark. Trying to get that thing up there. But it was a lot of fun to do, even if the draft itself left a lot to be desired. But I want to set this up by saying, if you like this show and you do not care for the Boston Red Sox, I'm going to give you a timestamp check here. So you can just tune out. If you do not want to hear me complain about the Red Sox, this is my show, I'm going to do it. If you don't want to listen to me complain about the Red Sox, you can skip this segment, because this is going to go a few minutes. Because since I did my very first radio show in college, back at Winthrop University all those years ago, in 2019, I want to say is when we started. That was around the time, the end of the Red Sox season in 2019. Dave Dombrowski was fired as GM. And I like to call that the tipping point in the franchise that just won a World Series in 2018. It is my beloved Boston Red Sox. I've been a fan of them before I even knew before I could name you the whole roster. I've been a Red Sox fan since I was in third grade. I will start by saying, on the radio back in 2019, I came out vehemently against any idea that the Red Sox ownership could not retain Mookie Betts for whatever amount of money Mookie Betts wanted, because Mookie Betts was worth it, is worth it, and continues to prove that he is worth every penny that the Dodgers went ahead and gave him. But in fact, they insisted on it. They said, we're moving Mookie Betts. We can't afford it. We're not going to make a deal. We're not going to lose him for nothing. What they got back for him was ultimately nothing, except for the year of Alex Verdugo and whatever a backup catcher is worth at this point. So fine. I pounded the table. I screamed. I hollered. I cried out in horror. You can't do this to this franchise. But they did. And then Xander Bogaerts departed in free agency. Chris Sale gets traded. Rafael Devers gets traded. You completely get rid of every last remnant of the 2018 Red Sox. And granted, you had that fun run in 21. We were all there. That was a lot of fun. That was the last gasp of this group in a lot of ways. But it wasn't. The writing was on the wall. It was on the wall. And last year was a beautiful distraction from that, because the Devers trade. It was Father's Day. I went with my father to watch The Last Crusade, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, at a movie theater as like a present to my dad. It was a lot of fun. And I get in the movie theater and I just see this bomb go off, basically, the Red Sox have traded Rafael Devers for basically a bag of peanuts and a $5 bill to be named later. And at the time, I tried to rationalize it. I tried to think it through. Alex Bregman was here. We have him now. He's got a 3-year deal with an option. You know, I hate to lose Rafi, but there's still stuff here. We're winning baseball. They were playing some of their best baseball at the time. They just swept I think they had just swept the Yankees, and I think Devers had homered that day. And I thought, okay, I really don't understand this trade, but Devers had pouted about playing first base or not wanting to play first base, was mad he had to move off of third base to begin with at the beginning of the year. And you start to see what I'm saying, which is it's a cavalcade of bullshit when it comes from this front office. And I should say at the top. I've had a couple days to decompress, so the anger and the venom isn't going to be as strong in this. And maybe that will make it a little more eloquent. Maybe it'll make it a little more concise. Since 2018, the front office, and I mean at the very top, the ownership, the Fenway Sports Group of the Boston Red Sox, has not been a serious ownership group with regards to this team. They've gotten lucky in 2021 and in 25 last year. They've made 2 playoff appearances. In between that has been some of the most inept and defunct logic in constructing a roster I have ever seen. I've justified it. I've come out on this podcast and I thought this year would be better. I thought the pitching would be better. I thought, the offense would figure itself out even after the dumbness of not re-signing. Dumbness not even being the stupidity. That's better. The stupidity of not retaining Alex Bregman, not giving him a no-trade clause when he wanted to be here, was a locker room leader for guys like you need him to be, for Roman Anthony, Marcelo Meyer, Romy Gonzalez, all those guys, those younger guys in the equation. He was the guy that could help a guy like Tristan Casas out when he's healthy. All these different things, and you let him walk. After you pissed off Rafael Devers to the point where he wants out, and he gets out. So I could just spew venom at those deals to both Chaim Bloom for trading Mookie Betts or to Craig Breslow for dealing Chris Sale and creating Rafael Devers and doing all this. But I understand, and I'm smart enough to know they're just following marching orders. John Henry, who in 2002, along with Tom Werner and Larry Lucchino, as a part of the ownership group of the Boston Red Sox, it took over and became the steward of one of the most respected organizations in baseball, one of the iconic franchises in all of sports, proceeded to lead that group to a World Series that broke an 86-year curse in 2004, won another one in 2007, won another in 2013, and then capped off with a World Series in 2018. Those are all enough to have justified his existence as an owner, despite the fact that he was a part of various ventures at different points with, the efforts in Florida, getting in with the Marlins there for a period of time. Grew up a Cardinals fan, wasn't a Red Sox fan. We can let that be where it is. All those things are true. And all those World Series are evidence, and fans like myself will never forget them. And obviously, I come into the picture in 07. I wasn't there in 04. But to see the systematic deconstruction of one of those organizations that was so good and so had revitalized the idea of baseball in Boston with this ownership group. Like they had been the lovable loser for a long, long time. So close, but so far. And then they get all that goodwill built up by winning those 4 World Series that we talk about. And people can't understand why Red Sox fans over the last couple of years have bitched and complained about how this team, well, you guys won all those World Series. You can't have a couple bad years. It's not about having bad years. Every team goes through bad years. Patriots fans have experienced that after Belichick's last couple of years in New England without Tom. And then you get the Gerard Mayo years. It's not the point about having bad years. Every franchise has bad years. What we want is an ownership group that behaves like they run a major market organization. And this is where it all comes back to. John Henry and company, after Larry Lucchino passed, they started to take a different look at how to operate this franchise. They looked at teams like Tampa Bay, one of the finest organizations in baseball, despite having one of the smallest payrolls in all of baseball. And when you're an owner of a big conglomerate ownership group that owns like Liverpool FC, owns the Pittsburgh Penguins, owns part of RFK Racing, there's a lot of things that you could utilize your money in different ways. And there's new analytical approaches to the game of baseball. And those are all well and good when applied properly, but not when you're not willing to spend money. And I understand there are instances over that time period where John Henry and company were like, we've wasted money. Rusney Castillo getting money. Whether it was Chris Sale's extension where he kept getting hurt and that wasn't his fault, but he kept getting hurt. Or you give a lot of money to a guy like Trevor Story after Xander Bogaerts leaves. And that doesn't work the way you exactly hoped it would, but, Trevor was, banged up as well. Or you give these big offers to guys in the past. We can go back years to look at other options. The point being, they gave money in the wrong places and it burned them a couple times. So they decided to pack up and decide to operate like a small market team. And that's what frustrates Red Sox fans. But all that aside, let's leave that for a moment. That's my frustration on that regard. They've been operating like that since 2019. They fired Dave Dombrowski, who is a go-for-it GM. He's in Philadelphia right now. He just fired their manager. He's trying to win with a core right there. He did it in 2018. And once the Red Sox said, nope, this whole spending and going big thing is not our MO anymore. We're going to take a more analytical, financial approach to the game. Dave Dombrowski's not your guy. Fine. Chaim Bloom comes in from the Rays organization, the very model franchise you're trying to build yourself off of, despite them never winning a World Series and you being able to outspend them 5-1 every time. You decide you want to operate and act as if you are Tampa Bay. So you hire one of their guru GMs. Now, it should be noted that the Dodgers operate with a guy who was groomed in the Tampa Bay system, but they're not afraid to spend money. And they have won World Series and been to multiple World Series since he became the man in charge of baseball there in Los Angeles. Friedman, the individual that I'm trying to remember his first name from, running the show out in LA. The concept works that he's trying to approach and, taking a look at players, but at the same time, they spend money and they have a luxury of riches on that team. There are options up and down that roster. They can develop guys as well. Dalton Rushing's proving that at catcher for the Dodgers. The point is, there is a way to be more sensible with your money without completely shutting the purse strings forever and deciding just to give out a little bit here and there. Half measures don't work. Half measures do not work in sports ownership. They do not work. You will not find a team that consistently wins titles playing the penny pinching market, especially not in a big city. It doesn't exist. But whatever, so be it. The one saving grace that the Boston Red Sox organization had was the fact that they had one of the best minds in baseball on their bench, Alex Cora. And whatever you want to think about his role in the Astros sign-stealing scandal, his suspension in 2020, one of the worst Red Sox seasons ever when Ron Renicky hopped on the bench, was the interim manager there in that 1 year he was suspended. Worked out in the end because Cora came back, and they go to the playoffs the very next year. Alex Cora is one of the best managers in baseball. And I don't know where this narrative gradually began that he wasn't. He has been, and he's as respected around the game as anybody you will find. His insights, his breakdown, his ability to work guys into bigger situations. You can connect from being a player to now being on the bench, managing guys at all levels, veterans, rookies, all of that. He's got an analytical approach to certain things. He understands construction of a lineup. He knows how to do a lot of those things. And you can nitpick whether he's too heavy on platooning guys and working guys in and out of a lineup. That's fine. That's a valid criticism you can have. But at the end of the day, he's not a guy at fault for the failures of the Boston Red Sox over the last couple of years because he is not the one picking the groceries. To use the old Bill Parcells excuse of why he left in New England when fighting with Robert Kraft and left to go take the Jets job eventually, He wasn't allowed to shop for the groceries, and neither was Alex Cora. And Alex Cora said he didn't want to be a manager forever, thought he might want to be an executive one day, might want to be in the front office. Thought that'd be a lovely thing. You do the Brad Stevens thing like they did in Boston with the Celtics, from head coach to general manager. And Brad Stevens has worked out great in the front office in Boston. They're a phenomenally run team. But we figured that was down the road. He signed a 3-year extension. He was in year 2 of that 3-year extension this season. And I went out Saturday night to go get a pizza. I was having poker night at the house. I needed to eat something. Had to go get a pizza. Drove downtown to get a pizza, uptown to get a pizza. It's raining. I'm trying to get in. I'm like parked on the street trying to get in. I get my pizza. I run back out of the car. Sit down. Plug my phone back in. And I look down and I see the most nauseatingly, frustratingly disgusting bit of news that I've seen pop up on my phone from ESPN in a long time. And it was the announcement that the Boston Red Sox had fired 5 coaches, I think actually 6 coaches, including Jason Varitek and Alex Cora, in the month of April after starting the year with a losing record. And to say my frustration with this Red Sox roster this year has been, notable is an understatement. I've complained about it, and I haven't complained about it as much on this show because I've been trying to give it time. I've been trying to be patient because I knew it wasn't gelling right now. And the rotation is a big part of that equation. When you build a roster and you act as if we're going to be a run prevention team and the pitching and the defense stink, no matter what your offense is struggling with, you're going to continue to plummet downward. And they've plummeted down to the bottom of the American League. But I was not pointing the finger at Alex Cora. I wasn't there. I wasn't going to do it. But the Boston Red Sox and their GM, Craig Breslow, former player of the Red Sox as well, decided now was the time to do it. Pull the trigger, clean house. And Craig Breslow did not hire Alex Cora, so he's not his guy. And Alex Cora, there have been stories that have come out in the week following this announcement saying that he had gone to ownership in the past over what Chaim Bloom had done with roster construction, argued that point with John Henry and company, and got in his way, got Bloom out of there. And maybe there's the conspiracy now that Craig Breslow wanted him out so he couldn't get ousted by Alex Cora. Because Alex Cora did have a way with, ownership and had built up a lot of goodwill. He signed the extension. We figure he's here till the end of it at a minimum. And when he signed that extension, we weren't sure he was going to get an extension because it didn't look like it was trending in the right direction. The roster was being depleted. They had a good, group of guys coming up from the farm. But at the end of the day, they weren't making playoff appearances. They made the playoff run last year. And then it all falls apart due to injury and everything else at the end of last season. But make no mistake, Alex Cora, Jason Varitek, and the entire Red Sox coaching staff gets cleaned out for one simple rule, that they could not handle the fact that their vision for this Red Sox roster failed. It has failed up until this point. They promote the manager of the Worcester Red Sox, Chad Tracy, to be the interim manager, bring some of the bench coaches up in that scenario, and they're just deciding this is what it's going to be for the rest of the year. Maybe they go to somebody else at some point at the end of the year. I think Chad Tracy is actually a worthy candidate of being in the conversation. I thought a couple of names would be worthy of it. But this is my lowest point as a Red Sox fan. And I know that sounds crazy to a generation of Red Sox fans before me, and I do sympathize, understanding that they didn't see a winner. And they came close, and they were pointed at and made fun of for years as Red Sox fans. And I have not had to experience a tenth of that. But for the first time that I've been a fan of this franchise, they waved a flag and said, we have absolutely no idea what we're doing anymore. We have let all the people that our fan base loves, the John Lesters of the world, the Mookie Betts, the Xander Bogarts, the Kyle Schwarbers that were there for like half a season. We let Chris Sale go. We let Rafael Devers get mad to the point where he gets gone. Alex Bregman is gone. At some point, what is a manager to do? What is he to do with a lineup where Caleb Durbin is your third baseman after trying to replace both Alex Bregman and Rafael Devers, where Trevor Story is asked to bat in, bigger situations. And again, you could blame Alex Cora for batting him as high in the order as you want, but he's a veteran bat in this lineup with a bunch of young guys, and AC trusted a veteran in that spot to do that. But outside of Wilson Contreras and Willie Abreu, nobody's hitting in this lineup right now. It's abundantly clear. And if you say, hey, okay, the other argument I saw come out in the articles this week was they wanted to go make a change of the hitting coach, and AC said you'd have to fire me to do that. That's him sticking up for his coach, and I understand that, and people are going to be pissed about that. I can see fault in that if the team's not hitting and you believe it's on the vision of the hitting coach and Pete Fozzie there. But that's a manager doing his job, standing up for his guys, and I get it. But at the end of the day, it's on the players to ultimately produce, and they weren't doing that. And this is a move that always you see managers and general managers and teams do this all the time. Players are not producing at the rate they need to. We got to clean house. The point I'm making is this. This is a complete misunderstanding of what is wrong with this organization. They can't fire themselves. Now, Craig Breslow might get fired at some point because this is a vision, and he's come out in the media and said this. He said that he did not give the easiest lineup to work with for Alex Cora and what they needed to accomplish this year. He said that in so many words. I'm paraphrasing a bit. But he expressed in his behind-the-doors meeting with Alex Cora the other day when they fired him that this was not the easiest lineup to work with. So, to my point, this is my most frustrating point as a Red Sox fan. And I say this, and I've said it to everybody. There is no sport I want to stink in less than baseball. Baseball is 162 games. You basically surrendered in the first month of the season. Now, I'm not saying this team isn't capable of winning games and maybe even fighting for a wild card. I refuse to believe that in the month of April that you can officially write a team off like that. I don't believe that. But what you're telling me is we have no vision, we have no understanding, we're just guessing at this point. We're firing the guy. Like, what benefit does it do you at this point in the year to fire Alex Cora? You want to fire him at the end of the season? Fine. Now you've done twofold. You've done a problem now. You cleaned out the guys that might have been able to take over this job admirably in an interim position. You also fire the guy in the middle of an extension. What manager, if it's not Chad Tracy, wants to inherit that role? That you have no job security even if we give you an extension with years. And I bring that up because when they were looking for a new front office exec to run baseball, they could not get anybody to sign up to take the job that Craig Breslow currently operates. Craig was not a coveted option at the time. A lot of Red Sox fans like myself were willing to give him, room to work and grow because he is one of our own. He did pitch in Boston. He did have credentials that if you looked and dug deep, there was value. There was something there. And when the pickings were slim, okay, we'll give Craig a shot. And I've given Craig a lot of leeway, but he's been fleeced on deals not once, not twice, multiple times. The returns have not been there on the deals that he has made. That's plain and simple. And that's why we're talking about a team right now that's at the bottom of the division and looks anemic on offense. And the pitching that they did actually spend a little money on in the offseason has looked putrid. Garrett Crochet on the injured reserve. Had to go on the 15-day. I mean, Sonny Gray's hurt. Brian Bayo has failed to live up to any of the hope and expectations that we had originally for him, and now he struggles to be a fifth guy starter in the rotation. Every fifth day, you're just worried about how many runs he's going to give up. Only guy looking reasonably good right now in that rotation is Ranger Suarez, and he started the year miserable too, but he's finally started to look like the man we paid the money to. So this has gone longer than it needed to be, but that's the point. I'm frustrated that this organization, and it starts at the ownership group, and I don't like to do this. I've never had to look at the ownership of a team I loved out of the Carolina Hurricanes when Peter Kroumanis gave up being a serious owner and then eventually sold after pissing off the entire fan base and outcharging everybody for parking. Have I really had to go after the ownership of a team I love? But now it is abundantly clear to me that John Henry and company are not doing the fans in Boston a service. It's still the most expensive day out for 4 anywhere in the United States as far as Major League Baseball is concerned. To take your family to Fenway, which I have done last season and was happy to do it because I love this team. I love this team as much as any team I root for, it maybe more. Because I played baseball. Baseball is in my DNA. I love it so much. I talk about it on here, even though most people that are following or listening to this are not huge baseball people to begin with. I'm alienating a part of my show because I love this sport so much that I insist on talking about it. I get that. All I want is serious baseball from a serious organization doing things that are intending on winning a World Series. If you don't win the World Series and you're trying, I can live with that. If you're not good, but you're trying, I can see that. What I can't live with is this half-hearted, half-measure approach to baseball. It's all or nothing. And this is like the guy that has the big successful restaurant, but then says, I can't spend money on nice ingredients anymore because I opened 6 other restaurants. Minus the fact that I wouldn't be able to own those 6 other restaurants if the first restaurant here wasn't successful. But no, I don't need that restaurant. It's been here forever. Everybody keeps coming and ordering the shitty food. They'll keep coming and ordering the shitty food. And the problem, part of the problem is the Red Sox fan base. Yes, we are part of the problem. We'll keep coming because we love Fenway Park. We love the Red Sox. No matter how many times you trade away guys we love, we lose guys we love. We lose the guys that we grew up wanting to see develop and succeed in this organization. We see guys leave this organization and go excel in other places. You keep slapping us around the face, and we keep coming back. So now I'm putting a hand up and going, enough. Enough. Be better. That's the simplest way I can put it. I'm not going to sit here and I can't do the yelling and screaming right now, mainly because it's late at night and I don't want a noise complaint. The studio here is in a residential area, so we cannot have it, be complete issue. By the way, the Phillies fired Rob Thompson. Another team, a team I picked to win the World Series, has fired its manager. I'm off to a hot start with predictions this year, minus the fact that I've gotten the World Series right a couple times in the last 5 years, but fine. If you want to point fault at it, the Blue Jays are looking a lot better. I said the Blue Jays would be good. They will be good. There are a bunch of teams underperforming right now that'll still be good at the end of the year. You cannot bank on early season results for the entire year. I think the Phillies are in a bit of a pickle though, because they wanted Alex Cora, and Alex Cora said, I'm going to go live with my family and enjoy this time off because I'm getting paid by the Red Sox. And you know what? God bless him. That's what he should have done. If I were him, and Dave Dombrowski probably is coveting Alex Cora because they had a great working relationship in 18 and 19. That's a logical place for him, and I think he's exactly what they needed. But Don Mattingly is the interim manager there. And so be it. I mean, he has a right to go and do what he needs to do, and I think he left in a very classy and professional manner, as did Jason Varitek, who, that's the other part of this story that pissed me off. They said they're going to reassign Jason Varitek, franchise legend, captain of the Red Sox. No, we're just going to reassign him. We're not going to outright and out fire him because they knew the PR of that would look like shit. And it did look like shit. And he said, no, I'm not taking some demotion. You're either firing me or you're not. So they fired him. No way around it. And that's exactly why I can be mad at an ownership group that has given me those World Series, because they treat the people that we love in this organization like shit. And there's no way around it. This was a bad situation from top to bottom, and it could have been prevented. But it starts with one guy, and it starts with the purse strings. And when they aren't open, everything else fails. Baseball, for better or for worse, may end up with a lockout next year because of the heights of money spent in this game. And you can argue that from a logistical point of view all you want. You can say that shouldn't happen. It should be about X, Y, and Z. There needs to be a floor. There needs to be a cap. There needs to be all these things. But when you're the Boston Red Sox, you don't have the right to be anything less than the Boston Red Sox. You owe it to generations of fans and players alike to be the Boston Red Sox. And I can't say over the last almost 10 years that you have operated as such. Even winning a World Series did not save you. That was the last time I truly believe you operated like you were trying to get somewhere. And you did, because that's the best Red Sox team I have ever seen. It's the best baseball team I've ever watched, period. And that includes these current Dodgers. I'm not even kidding you. That 2018 Red Sox team had everything. And the fact that we're talking about one World Series from that group is shameful. All right, now let's move on to a more pleasant story. The NCAA has announced 76 teams for the March Madness NCAA tournament, expanding from 64 to 76, so 12 teams. I know this is just a sunny start to a program, but college sports are dead. And I'm talking specifically about the Big Two. I think there are a couple college sports that are still as pure and enjoyable as any they have ever been. I think college baseball is in a great spot right now. I think it's being portrayed in the media poorly. I don't think it's given the proper spotlight in the springtime that it deserves. If you go out and watch and follow college baseball, whether it's regionally with your own college, your alma mater, or following at the top, there's a lot of great baseball being played around the country. And especially in the Carolinas here, there's so many phenomenal baseball programs. But I think that's a sport that hasn't been completely corrupted by everything else. But college football and college basketball, the way we know them and love them, are dead. And now you're just making peace with it. I've made peace with college football because I believe right now we're at a spot where we have not completely shut the door on the little guy. College football, for the moment, has not completely shut out the little guy. And I've banged the table and made that point for a while now. I will continue to fight for those programs in the group of five, the American, who doesn't deserve to be classified as a group of five. They deserve to be in the conversation because of what they've been able to produce. But the point is, there's still a path for James Madison and Tulane through what we saw last season. Whether you like the result or not, the opportunity to play is still there. They haven't completely killed it. They probably will. It's coming. And I'm going to fight like hell till then, clinging to that last little bit of energy I have to keep that window open for those programs so we have stories like Boise State to talk about in the grand scheme of college football. Like, a Tulane, like East Carolina, whichever program you want to run down from that area. The programs like TCU and SMU that have bumped their way up to being factors at the power conference level, whatever it be. I will continue to fight for them. But this, on the NCAA's part for the basketball portion, doesn't completely kill the little guy. But what it does do is reward mediocrity from the big kids. Like, this would be great if this was 12 at large. I could live with 12 at large. Now, mind you, the NCAA tournament is flawless as far as its dynamic. 64 is perfect. I don't even think I would ever go above 64. Because if I could look at you, I can't make an argument. I can't look at anybody straight in the face and go, with a 64-team field and as many at-large bids available and some of these mid-major conferences having a pathway, I can't look at you and say we did not get to a proper champion. We did. We found a perfect way to crown a champion each and every year. I don't find illegitimate champions the way I do in college football. I don't find them with the NCAA tournament. All this does now is add a bunch more mediocrity to the equation. It ruins the way we pick a bracket with all these extra games we're going to have to work in and we're going to crowd up the mix with. And this is ultimately greed. This is all greed. And the point, I think I saw Brandon Walker or somebody from Barstool talking about this week. The point at some point, we have nobody speaking for the everyday fan when it comes to college athletics. We don't. You may dislike the way NFL does something or Major League Baseball or basketball, but more often than not, they're out to serve a consumer. And they do listen and they do adjust things. Like baseball has done wonders with shortening the pace, and picking up the pace of the game, shortening the duration, making it more accessible for people like that. And it has improved the game. For purists like me, we were skeptical, but it has improved the game. More people are watching. The ratings are up. Those things are all good. The game of baseball on field is in a great place because they listened. And you can make tweaks about it with the NFL or the NBA trying to, adjust some things to make it a little bit better play. But college sports is devoid of any voice of reason or any adult in the room. And the sad part is, you could say, well, what these teams need to do is break away from the NCAA. That's completely beside the point. That doesn't work. Because then you let the inmates run the asylum, and you let the Greg Sankeys of the world control the power of all of college sports, which is about the worst thing you could possibly do. You think it's bad now, give that guy autonomy to do whatever he wants, and it's all over. It's over, Johnny. But this is just disappointing. It's greed. There's no other way around it. There's no logic to it. There's no we're going to get more of the mid-majors in there. We're going to get a second bid to the Big South. Or we're going to give the A-Sun, or the A10, not the A-Sun, the A10 another bid. Or we're going to get, another at-large for Indiana State or whoever else from the fringe from a couple years ago. Get, one of those true basketball conferences like the Big East, another team. We're not doing that. We're just going to give you 17 and 15 Auburn. Or we're going to give you 500 record, we'll give you a team from the ACC who had a losing record, but they made a deeper run in the ACC tournament. We're just going to reward mediocrity. More does not mean better. It does not mean better in this case. This is not about opportunity. This is not about more options and more opportunity for smaller programs that can't compete on a financial level but have great teams, do compete, and do succeed. This is about rewarding the kids that have their mouths full and they just want more. They want more. They got to gobble up everything. That's all it is. And there's really nothing more I can add about it. I'm just telling you right now, there's no going back. Make peace with it if you have to. Don't watch if you have to. I'm not saying this is going to turn me off for the NCAA tournament because I know I'll be there. I know I'll be there next March watching and so on and so forth, and every March. But it does diminish the product to me at a substantial level. Ultimately, I think it doesn't water down the champion, and the champion will still be the best of those 76. It's just disappointing that this is the way we go. And it crowds the picture, and it ruins what is the best of all the college championships right now. So it's disappointing. We'll go back to the top. We had the NFL draft. We had the draft show extravaganza. I have to say, not a good draft. This class to me, and this isn't sour grapes about my board not going the way I wanted it to, because I saw plenty of people. Look, let's be honest. There's a lot of crossover between what I put down, what a guy like Mel Kiper put down, Todd McShay. All these different analysts had their all these guys had their different views of this board. And ultimately, there were some outliers there. Outliers in everybody's case. I just think overall, this is a really shallow draft. I will give the NFL credit. Looked like a phenomenal scene in Pittsburgh. Talked about it. The traveling circus of the draft has done wonders for all these markets over the last couple of years. I think it's great. I know next year is going to be at the National Mall in Washington, D.C. I think that'll be phenomenal. Look awesome. The draft time. Got that thing down in about 3 hours. That was great. Because sometimes we'll drag this thing out past midnight. It'll take forever with picks. They had the faster clock. That's fine. We have less guys showing up to the actual draft anyways than we did maybe 15 years ago, so that's fine. Most of the big names wound up where we thought they might wind up. There were some surprises, but overall, I just feel like we talk about the NFL as running such a great show and the product is at its highest and it's great to watch. And that is all true. But we see more and more head-scratching picks every year with the draft. And then when these teams wind up next year picking high again, we can't they sit there and go, we don't know what's going on. We're fighting our best for our fans. And then we go and went, like, you took this corner in the first round who wasn't on anybody's board. And there's an infallibility to NFL GMs and front offices that I find kind of surprising, because they continually make the same decisions, and every once in a while they prove everybody right and go, that's why we drafted that guy. But as far as the first round goes, The pool itself was not terribly deep to work with, so I'll give them a pass on that regard. There are only about 5 or 6 guys that I thought were immediate day one impact guys. I think the Jets really succeeded, which is crazy. I think the Giants built a great class with John Harbaugh for his first year as the Giants head coach. I mean, those are two teams I didn't look at thinking that they've shown in the past they could draft well, but they did. There's some deeper options there. The Ravens kind of always do what they do, and they've been a model team at drafting for years. Cowboys had a strong draft. I just think overall, like I saw a level of disinterest in this class that I've never seen before. And again, and that's quarterback heavy. I mean, I had people ask me where Cade Klubnik was going to go. Like, did you not watch Clemson last year? He was awful. He ain't going in the first 2 rounds. He ain't going in the first 3 rounds. I mean, Carson Beck went before Cade Klubnik. If we had said that a year ago, people would have thought you're crazy. So a lot happened in the last year. I think part of the problem is they're not getting developed at the college level the way they used to be. And that's a part that we don't talk about when we talk about empowering players to leave and search out NIL deals and bounce to 5 teams in 5 years. I don't think they're getting the NFL development they need to. They're taking on more projects at the NFL level. So that's why a lot of people can look at the draft board and go, I never saw that guy do anything that jumped out at me. And he only played for like a year or two as a starter. Because guys are bouncing around the league more and more now, and they're bouncing around college more and more now. And then you see when they get drafted, they bounce around at pro teams now more and more. There's a lack of, vision with some of these players because they have to go chase the money and the best deal for them in their college years because they don't think they're going to get the guarantee of it at the NFL level. They're not guaranteed anything as a pro from college. So they now have access to grab it, but I don't think you're getting the best versions of these players in that process either. It's been abundantly clear to people watching that, there's a disconnect between development of player at the college level and then pro readiness. We talk about it a lot. Say this guy's a project. This guy needs to be a day 2 pick. But eventually you got to pick somebody in the first round, and teams did. So it's disappointing, but it speaks to a larger issue. So I'm not going to put it all in the draft, but this draft class has a lot to prove to a lot of people. The quarterbacks are what they are. Some of them wound up in interesting situations that I think might benefit them, but they're going to have to sit. I don't think there are a lot of guys that you're going to look at from this first round. They're going to be like in the rookie of the year conversation immediately weeks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. They're just not there. They're not ready. And the way that the NFL has structured things now, they get less practice time, they get less OTAs, they get less all these different things in pursuit of more games. We cut out the time to develop these players in the offseason and in practice during the weeks because we have to get more games in. It comes back to greed. Greed has been the entire theme of the show. You can put it out in front. Greed is the big reason why these things hurt. And it only hurts you, the sports fan. Hurts the sports fan and maybe even hurts the individuals involved in some of the sports, but they're not realizing it in the moment. Last up on the main topics for the evening before we get into a couple of our segments later on in the show, I guess this is just the greed show because I didn't even realize this. The NBA has rolled out some rules and changes to try to curb the tanking problem in the NBA. Teams trying to intentionally put a half-hearted roster on the court in an effort to get a lottery pick in the draft. I've always thought the lottery is kind of a crock. I think it should always just go back to being the worst team. You get the first pick. The point of being bad and bottoming out to begin with is to try to get the benefit of the first overall pick. And in the NBA, that doesn't always work because of the lottery. They're trying to keep the same teams from getting that first overall pick. It's bit the Hornets plenty of times over the year. Like they deserve to get the first pick in different drafts and then ultimately wound up with less than the best player available when they needed the best player available. They basically flipped the entire draft process last year, so Cooper Flagg wound up a Maverick after all that situation with as little percentage they had at the top pick in that draft. But they want to stop tanking. They want to stop encouraging ownership to bottom out and not try in the effort of getting that pick. But they fail to address the one thing that we've talked a lot about already, which comes back to everything. It all comes back to money. The only way to stop tanking, and this is my God's honest truth, it'll never happen, but this is the only way to truly solve it, is to make it hurt. You got to make it hurt financially. Because teams operate with the ability to make a profit despite being bad. The Chicago Bulls are a perfect example of this. The Bulls operate at a 500 level and can generate money for Jerry Reinsdorf and his ownership group every year. Because they're the Chicago Bulls. They're one of those brands in basketball. It's a global brand. They know about them in China, Japan, Taiwan. They know about them in England. They know about them everywhere. Basketball is a global game, and because of Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, and Phil Jackson, they know about the Chicago Bulls around the planet. Same goes for the Knicks. Same goes for the Lakers, the Celtics, the Rockets. All these teams are global entities. So they still make money. Even the bad ones make money. But now they can operate and go, we don't really even have to spend any money to make any money. It's true in all sports. The Pittsburgh Pirates operate this way. The Cincinnati Reds operate this way. There's enough of a built-in fan base that you can get away with it. You can do it at all levels and still make a profit. So what I would suggest to anybody that wants to seriously curb tanking, take away a cut of revenue. Take away their piece of the pie. Limit how many tickets you can sell. Cut off whatever revenue stream you need to make it hurt. And I understand there's going to be repercussions to that. I think even quietly it was acknowledged that Adam Silver would be in favor of a relegation process for teams. Now, I don't know where you relegate a team to when there isn't. What are you going to put them in the G League? I don't know what you do with relegation requires somewhere to go to earn your spot back up. And I don't know where you go with the NBA because there isn't enough to do that. But make it hurt. You have to make it hurt. Because as long as it's about, keeping the big teams strong and the small teams not as strong, the small teams are going to operate to trying to keep themselves in the conversation by getting the top draft pick and trying to succeed and trying to build from there. But they can operate they can operate as a losing franchise and make money. And until you can solve that problem, you're not going to solve tanking. Make it hurt financially. That's the only solution you have. Moving on now to our reoccurring segment. It's the 60-second segment. This is the segment on the show where we take 3 topics, give it 60 seconds on the clock, and I will go through it and talk about it as best as I can with whatever opinion I need to have about these topics. I'm going to put 60 seconds on the clock. Our first segment with 60 seconds on the clock is the Diana Rossini, Mike Vrabel announcement. All the developments that have come out of that deal. The ongoing saga continues with that whole ordeal. I'm ready to say a couple things. I understand this is an unfair situation for Diana Rossini to lose her job for her journalistic role. I understand that people want Mike Vrabel's head to roll. I do not believe I don't believe that punishment fits the crime he committed. Was it wrong? Yes. They're going to have to deal with that in their own private lives the way they need to. The NFL commissioner, Roger Goodell, came out and said, I'm not going to punish Mike Vrabel based off these situations. At the end of the day, the people that need to be left alone in the portrayal in the media of this are Mike Vrabel's wife and Diana Rossini's husband and family. Those families need to be left alone. I'm tired of seeing articles about who Mike Vrabel's wife is, who Diana Rossini's husband is. They have to deal with those repercussions in their own private time. That's 60 seconds. To cap it off, actually, I left 1 second on there. A little over. I get it. I know people want people's heads to roll all the time. They want Mike Vrabel to be punished for this. I believe ultimately you could reprimand him in public. This isn't a fireable offense. I'm sorry. It's not. It's not a good look. It was 2 consenting adults. It's not an abuse of power. Is it wrong? Yes. Do I think he recognizes that it was wrong? Yes. And he's a leader of men. He can use this to teach that moment. This is over 60 seconds, but I haven't talked about it on the show, so there you go. I break the rule on my own show. I'll do it if I want to. Story number 2 is the MJ movie. It has come out to both positive and violently negative reviews so far. I have not had a chance to go see it myself. I'm going to try and go possibly next week to see it. I am very curious to see about this movie. The big story coming out about it is the rewrites and changes to the end of the movie originally were to include his role in the underage sexual abuse allegations that were put out about Michael Jackson that are well documented. Those were originally included in there. Those were taken out by the family. I know there's that part of it. There's also just this, overwhelming reaction to the film itself. Some people arguing that it didn't depict what made Michael Jackson this mythic figure to begin with as a celebrity. I think it is worthy that they made reference to and told the story properly of Joe Jackson's role in Michael Jackson's upbringing, because it's been well documented, but I don't think the world understood it to the extent they saw in film. And it'll be interesting to see, once I can actually see this film, just how bad it's been or how good it is. There you go. That's 60 seconds and about 64 seconds. So getting a little bit better. I am interested to see that, and I am curious to see what they got right and what they got wrong, what they glossed over. Because again, that's all we want. We talked about it a couple weeks ago. Is as honest a biopic as you can make. Last up, this one should go 60. Cooper Flagg wins the NBA Rookie of the Year over Con Knippel. Look, this one was written in stone from the time he was drafted last year by the Dallas Mavericks. He would have had to have played no time to win Rookie of the Year. The deplorable part about it is that Con Knippel deserved this award. He set the rookie record for three-pointers in a season. He helped elevate the Charlotte Hornets to a play-in team. He was a major factor on this team. He had a bad play-in. There's no doubt about it. The play-in tournament was not his shining moment. But to be honest, if you look at the numbers, pick which one you want, Cooper Flagg did not exceed what Con Knippel did this season. Con Knippel deserved to be Rookie of the Year. My point is, it shouldn't terribly shock anybody that Cooper Flagg won. Cooper Flagg does some amazing things. He's going to be amazing for years. Con Knippel deserved this award, and he didn't win it because the people in power said, this is the guy we have chosen him to be the guy. He's the future of the league. So be it. They were not ready for for Con Knippel to do what he did. There you go. I'm disappointed in the voters. First of all, I thought it should have been in before the play-in tournament. I didn't think that should weigh in at all, but apparently it did. Factor into the decision-making process of those in charge. And that's disappointing because Cooper Flagg, phenomenal player, had a great rookie season, but he was not Rookie of the Year. By the definition, was not the best rookie in the NBA this season. So there you go, the 60-second segment. Love that segment. Who cares if I go 62, 63, 64, 66 on that one? Back this week with a reoccurring segment that we didn't have in last week's show. It is Hat of the Week. This is a Dryden Racing Formulas hat. They produce motor oils and performance lubricants and other things for race cars, primarily for dirt racing, which is where I know them from being a sponsor of Logan Schuchart for so many years, and I'm a big Logan Schuchart guy. They've also sponsored various late model teams as well. This hat is significant to me because it is signed right here in gold Sharpie, which makes it a little hard to see on camera here, but you can see it well on the hat, by the greatest dirt late model racer and one of my favorite race car drivers of all time, Scott Bloomquist. I got to meet Scott at the, I want to say, I forget what year off the top of my head. It was at the World Finals a couple years ago before he passed, and obviously his loss was tragic for a number of levels, and the details are out there for those curious that don't know what happened in the end of Scott's life. But he experienced a lot of hardships at the end there, both health-wise and other. So when I went to the World Finals, those were all abundantly clear, and I'd seen Scott race in other events before, but I'd never bothered to go up and try to do this. And I run this conversation a lot on this program. The idea of where and when do you want to meet your heroes? Do you want to even bother to meet your heroes? Because sometimes they're phenomenal, like Peter Criss, and sometimes you get the guy on the wrong day. And I'll be honest with you, my interaction with Scott was very brief, but the people involved made sure that I got this hat signed, and Scott did it even after coming off a tough race, pulled back into his spot back there on the backstretch in the pit area. And to be honest with you, it was brief. He did it. He was exhausted, but he was nice enough to do it for me, and I appreciated that. Didn't have really a conversation with him. I thanked him for his time, and that was all it needed to be. Because Scott was a mythic legend in dirt late model racing. He's the greatest dirt late model driver of all time, and I have this memento now for the rest of time, and I don't do this for a lot of guys, but Scott Bloomquist is one of those guys that I'm going to be proud to say all these years later, I have a Scott Bloomquist signed hat. I'm a big, I like to have mementos of people that I, whether I admire their craft or anything else. I do like to have that. It's not blind hero worship, because Scott had a documented history of things, both on track and off track, that people could sit there and go, I don't like him for that, I don't like him for this. But if you saw him, you watched him, you understood what he brought to the sport. Nobody was more important to the sport of dirt late model racing than Scott Bloomquist. He was an innovator in both chassis and race car design. He was a phenomenal talent behind the wheel, and he was a character. He was a fun-loving guy. He was a big rock and metal guy. He had the coolest designed race cars out there. I mean, I'll put a couple of pictures up for some of those badass race cars you've ever seen. He was Black Sunshine, the Voodoo Child, all these different nicknames. He was kind of a hippie in a race car. I mean, he was all those things. And he was so many different things to so many different people. But behind the wheel, nobody could touch him. And in that moment, not at his greatest moment ever, but I think the last World Finals he ever ran, I got to meet him one time. I got him to sign his hat, and I got to say thank you, which is all you really want from the opportunity when you get to meet somebody you are a fan of. So that is our hat of the week. It is a Dryden Racing hat, and he was sponsored by Dryden at one point, which is why I felt fine giving him this hat to sign. Last up, we've got one more new segment to roll out to you this week. It is a reoccurring segment. It's something I've been wanting to do, and it's also to coincide with eventually this year. I know we've been talking about it. The Albums Review podcast is coming your way. We will have a title and a installation for you guys, hopefully by the summer. And the Records Rehash podcast is tentatively what it's going to be named, where we take a look at some of the greatest albums in both my record collection and of all time. It's something that I've wanted to do. Talking and doing deeper dives into music is something I love, and it's something that never goes away. Great music is great music. It stands the test of time. So we've got a list segment here. It's going to be called Collins' Power Rankings. I'm going to go through the collective discographies of some of my favorite musicians, and I'm going to power rank the albums, because everybody else likes to do this, and I love to go through and see where my opinions go, and maybe you'll update them from time to time. But right now, when I do this, is how the record stands for these respective groups. So we're going to do the first one, and where else can you start but with the most iconic music group of all time, the Beatles. The Beatles have left their indelible mark on music history. Their discography is deep and plentiful, but I have pulled 10 of my favorite albums from the Beatles discography. See, I've been spending a lot of time over the last couple years. The older I get, I find more and more to love with both the Beatles and their solo discography. But I'm going to rank them here, and this is probably not the list you're going to see from everybody, but it's my list, and I'm happy to just explain it. Number 10 is With the Beatles, one of the early albums from the very beginning with the Beatles. And obviously it's the era of the Beatles that I find, the most documented, but maybe not my favorite musically, as comparatively speaking. I do love a lot of the early music of the Beatles. When I was younger, I didn't get it. I'll be honest with you. It took me a while to appreciate just how good it was, and appreciate something that I should have recognized a lot quicker, which is that they were revolutionary for the historical moment in time when they're making it. Like, yes, you can nitpick some of the songs from back then, as especially holding them up against some of the later songs they produced, but at the time, they were revolutionary, groundbreaking in the studio. With both George Martin on as the producer for so many of these records, they created so much of the studio space and the musical process by which your favorite artists operate with today. And the With the Beatles is, one of my early installations that I put in the conversation in the top 10 ranking. Number 9 is Help. Much in the same way, there you start to see a maturation process with some of the songwriting. John Lennon starts to really show some of his, later compositions you're going to see on this record as well. And to me, there's not much more I need to add to that one. Number 8, Beatles for Sale. This is really where you start to see not just Lennon, McCartney, and other, Ringo Starr and George Harrison really contributing to the musical vision and the progression from the teeny bopper, girls screaming, youth heartthrob pop band to something a little bit more nuanced. And I think you start to see that really develop here with the Beatles for Sale. Number 7 is the White Album. This is maybe a controversial take. I have no problem with the fact that there are that many songs on that record. I know that's been a big complaint. there's a lot going on there, and it's not a very cohesive package. I think some of the highest highs the Beatles ever got are on the White Album, and that's why it's at 7. Because I think it's arguably George's greatest song contribution with While My Guitar Gently Weeps with the incredible Eric Clapton solo. You've got Helter Skelter in there as well from Paul McCartney trying to write the heaviest, nastiest song of the world, the answer to all those songs that he saw at the time come out. You have, all the great contributions up and down. To me, it's just, there's some slog on there. There's some of that stuff that I can easily skip on there. It's not my favorite cohesive package, and I think there's a lot of stuff in there that you could have whittled out. I don't object to the Beatles wanting to be like, this is all we have and this is what we want to share. That's fine. And honestly, we're fine for having it in the world. It doesn't make it my favorite album, though, however. Number 6 is Rubber Soul. And Rubber Soul is something that could easily have wound up in the top 5. This is just where you start to get down to preference. In My Life is one of my favorite John Lennon tracks of all time. That's no secret. But there's a lot. This, if I said where Beatles for Sale is where that process starts to evolve, this album, Rubber Soul, is really where you get to. This is no longer the 4 little lads from Liverpool that are singing songs about their girlfriend and the I want to take her out and hold your hand and all that. This is a little bit more reflective, a little more introspective. I mean, think about it. John Lennon's in his 20s when he writes In My Life. That's remarkable. To have such a level of introspection and, review on a life that's barely even begun. Unfortunately, he'd only live for another about, 14, 15 years after he writes that song, which is tragic. There's more about Lennon's life that comes out of his, our understanding of John through documentaries, through books, through all these things, through all the interviews he gave. And, in 65, 66, to go ahead and say, I'm willing to talk about and explain this and write this song and carry this, There's also Girl, which is a great Paul McCartney contribution. There's a lot of fun stuff to love about that album. It was a later acquired album for me, but once you hear it, there's no going back. It's a clear fork in the road as far as their career goes. Number 5 is Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. This one, I dare say, is probably a tad high on some people's list. It's not because of what it is. As an achievement, it deserves to be recognized as such because it's so groundbreaking with the production techniques and the idea of this conceptualized record where it's a fictionalized band that the Beatles got to portray, to create new music and take new directions. That's fine, but when you listen to John Lennon basically slag that idea off and saying he wasn't really thinking like that, that's fine. You don't have to buy into the idea of it being a concept record for it to showcase some really great tracks. You get tracks like With a Little Help from My Friends. You have A Day in the Life. You have Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. You've got all the pieces that would later show up throughout the rest of the Beatles' discography starting right there. And obviously LSD is a factor in it. I think that really opened up a lot of things. There's other great tracks from around this time that aren't on that album, which is so odd. And it does frustrate me that some of the best Beatles tracks of all time, like Strawberry Fields and Revolution and others, didn't wind up on an actual album. They're just released as a single. Number 4, A Hard Day's Night. This is without a doubt my favorite of the early Beatle records. As far as the mop-top foursome, A Hard Day's Night is a really tight package. You get contributions from the 3 main songwriters that I love. Each guy has a moment to stand out on that album. But I think more than anything, they are a tight unit. They are a fist. They are locked in musically with each other. There's no, separation with where their creative visions were. You see a cohesive package, and that makes for a tight album. That's the best way I can describe this musical endeavor. It's a tight cohesion amongst 4 guys playing at their at a beginning level. Like, you will see everything that these 4 musicians will contribute. You can start to see it right there in the composition of A Hard Day's Night. Number 3 for me is Revolver. Revolver follows the discussion topic from Rubber Soul into Sgt. Pepper's. And it's truly where the LSD is a part of their creative experience and experimentation with different forms of music and songwriting. It's a phenomenal album. You see like Taxman right off the top is such a wild choice to open an album with. It works. It might actually have, and I say this crazily, it might have my favorite John Lennon song, which I've gone back and forth, but I'm Only Sleeping is probably a song I listen to as much as any Beatles track ever. But you've got Taxman from George. You've got Paul with his contributions up and down the album, most notably Eleanor Rigby, which is such an outlier. Like nothing existed sounded like Eleanor Rigby at the time. And that's where people get misplace their idea of the idea. They misplace their opinion of the Beatles being overrated because they look at where music is now and they go, that can't be that significant. But when you're putting out an Eleanor Rigby in this time in the mid to late 60s, there's nothing that sounds like Eleanor Rigby. If you go back 10, 15 years, there would be no path to an Eleanor Rigby until a guy like Paul McCartney comes along. Number 2, this is a hot take, but this could have won the argument outright. Is Let It Be. Let It Be, to me, while disjointed in the assembly and even in the production, from where they started with originally going with Glenn Johns as the producer on the Get Back sessions, which are famously noted in the Get Back documentary that exists on on Disney Plus, which is a phenomenal documentary. If you have it, please go check that out. It's phenomenal. Peter Jackson did a great job. But they hand John Lennon and company hands this over to Phil Spector, and I know Paul has issues with the over orchestration and over production of the record, so much so that he had a later reissue come out later in a remix called Let It Be Naked, which is also phenomenal in its own right. But there's so much musicality going on here, so much growth in the songwriting. It kind of almost brings the Beatles into the 70s. It's closest to what we got as the Beatles in the next decade. And I think there's a lot of value in that. I think you have 2 phenomenal George tracks, For You Blue and I Mean Mine. You've got John with Across the Universe. You've got Dig a Pony. You know, there's so many great performances there. And then you have, I think, probably Paul's best contributions to the Beatles in a lot of ways. And I know that's crazy, but to me, Let It Be is the most beautiful song Paul McCartney ever wrote. It's my favorite Paul McCartney song. I think the studio version, not the single version with that solo changed. I think the solo from George, the piano playing by Paul, the backing vocals, I think the production on Let It Be, the studio track, is quite possibly the best song the Beatles ever put out. And I know there's a lot of, debate as to how much the rest of the band even wanted to do or like that song, but to me, it's Paul's best contribution to the Beatles. And that's saying something when you're talking about one of the greatest songwriters of the entire history of the planet. Let It Be is that track. And again, between that and the rooftop sessions and the entire process, to me, I love that period of time. And I understand it's where the band ultimately fractures. They were fracturing before that, and they will all tell you that. And I think it's sad because there's so much more that they could have done. You see George finally getting tracks on the album that can rival anything that his counterparts are doing. And that, to me, is really fun. And lastly, for that exact reason, number 1 is Abbey Road. Because Abbey Road is the true coda of the Beatles' discography. It is the creative nexus, the creative period where everything coincides. George writes something, and here comes the song. Those 2 songs rival anything that John and Paul do as songwriters. And I love Come Together. I love Maxwell's Silver Hammer. I know that's an often ridiculed track. I love I Want You, She's So Heavy. I love Golden Slumbers. I love The End. I love so much of this album. But George wins this album. And if you're, a guy like me who grew up originally, before you even loved the Beatles, loved George, this is an album where George thrives. Where something in Here Comes the Sun will stand the test of time for what George did. But even then, you still have Paul with the phenomenal Oh Darling. And, the medley itself, while is a mixed bag and an acquired taste for some, I think is a beautiful encapsulation of the entire band. Carry That Weight. There's so much great music in this album. And going to Abbey Road last December and getting to do the walk across the walkway, it was so cool. To me, Abbey Road, Let It Be is my favorite era of the Beatles. There's so much musicality going on there, so much musicianship, so much contributions from George that are worthwhile. It's a tragedy to me that it had to end at this point, because those three guys writing songs, Ringo getting Octopus's Garden, it's a fun track. I don't have to be ashamed of that. I love the Ringo stuff, whether it's Boys or his early track like that, or you could go through. All you got to do is Act Naturally. You could do that. You can talk about Act Naturally, or you can go through Yellow Submarine, or you can, pick out your favorite Ringo song. I love all his contributions. To me, this is the period of time that rewards the most as a musical enjoyer, because you're getting the best out of these three guys. And again, John's not in the best of health at the time, and he still turns out Come Together. And I Want You, She's So Heavy, and there's Polythene Pan, and there's all these other contributions in this equation, and he's still there. And then the end I think is the most beautiful ending to a band you could possibly have. I think I have to say this: Her Majesty is I understand why they threw it on there, but to me it kind of cheapens that a little bit. But the end is beautiful. I don't think there's a more. I think If You Die, that's the sound I kind of want to hear when I go, is the sound of the end. Because that's a beautiful piece of art. Not just music, beautiful piece of art. So there you go. That's my rankings. The first of many Collins Power Rankings of musical discographies. The Beatles, take your pick. This is my pick. I don't judge anybody else that has any other opinion. This is just where I landed. This is my favorite portion of their discography. I think it's pretty highlighted what era of the band I'm the biggest fan of. So there you go. That's going to wrap up our show. It's been a long one. Had a lot to get in there. Most of these won't be this long, but we appreciate everybody bearing with us tonight. I had to get a lot of frustration and venting out. I had time to cool off, though, a little bit, so I apologize if it wasn't as graphic and violent as you wanted it to be, but this is how it is. This is what this program is. Shooting from the hip. This is me. This is my opinion. This is where I stand. I'm backing it up with the logic I see to apply it to these topics. So that's the best we can do here. Thank you all for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe to all the episodes, whether it's on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, however you download and enjoy the show. We thank you so much for listening to another edition of the Collins Janus Show. The preceding episode was a production of Moonlight Media Works.